Brendan Fraser was everywhere in the late 1990s. Then he vanished. For years, nobody knew why. Tabloids made fun of his weight. Hollywood stopped calling. Fans assumed he just faded out. But in 2018, Fraser finally told the truth. He said a powerful Hollywood executive assaulted him at a luncheon in 2003. He said it changed everything inside him. He said he went home and cried. But that was only part of the story. There were surgeries nobody heard about, a divorce that nearly bankrupted him, and a secret he carried for 15 years before saying a single word. Now, at 57, with a new Oscar buzz surrounding his latest project and a recent candid interview with AARP magazine, Brendan Fraser has admitted what we all suspected: the pain never fully left, but neither did he. The Wandering Boy. Brendan Fraser came into the world on December 3, 1968, in Indianapolis, Indiana. But even that clear starting point never gave him a clear sense of home. He was born to Canadian parents, and his father worked as a Foreign Service officer for Canada's Office of Tourism. That one job shaped Brendan's whole childhood. Every few years, the family packed up again and started over somewhere new. Before he even turned 18, they had lived in Eureka, Seattle, Ottawa, Detroit, The Hague, London, Rome, and Switzerland. While most kids grew up with one neighborhood and one set of familiar faces, Brendan was learning how to walk into a room of strangers and begin again. That sounds exciting from the outside, but as a child, it felt very different. New schools, new rules, new accents, and the same uneasy feeling over and over. One day you knew where everything was. Then suddenly you did not. That gave him something valuable later as an actor. It sharpened his empathy and taught him to observe, but as a boy, it left him feeling rootless. He was born in the US, yet never fully American. He had Canadian roots, but never fully settled there either. That in-between feeling followed him everywhere. Yet, in the middle of all that movement, something steady finally appeared. During the family's time in London, Brendan found the theater. He was still very young, around 6 to 8, when West End shows like Oliver, The Mousetrap, and Jesus Christ Superstar first caught his imagination. In a childhood filled with abrupt departures, those dark theaters became a refuge. He sat still, watched stories unfold, and for a few hours the world made sense. There is something fitting in the fact that Oliver, a story about a child without a true place to belong, left such an impression on him. The moving also made him a linguistic chameleon. In Ottawa, he picked up French through immersion schooling. In The Hague, he absorbed conversational Dutch. By the time he was still very young, he was already switching between languages without much thought. That may have begun as survival, but later it became an artistic strength. It trained him to notice detail, to hear the hidden things in how people speak, and to understand that identity is often more fluid than it looks. When the time came for formal schooling, he attended Upper Canada College in Toronto and graduated in 1987. On paper, it looked polished and elite, but Brendan later described it in far rougher terms. Like Lord of the Flies. Boys formed harsh pecking orders. Newcomers were tested. For someone who had already spent years being the new kid again and again, that environment sharpened the survival instincts he had been building his whole life. Then, at last, acting became more than a fascination. He went to Seattle and studied at Cornish College of the Arts, completing his degree in 1990. The child who had spent years stepping into new cultures had stumbled into the perfect profession for all of it. The rise? That leap led to his very first film role in Dogfight in 1991. He was only 22, and the part was Tiny Sailor No. 1. It was not the kind of debut that announces a new star. But small as it was, that role got him his Screen Actors Guild card. Then, almost immediately, everything changed. In May 1992, Encino Man arrived, and Brendan Fraser suddenly became impossible to ignore. He played Link, a frozen caveman thawed out in modern California. He threw himself into it with full physical commitment, wild energy, and a kind of fearless sincerity that made the whole thing work. Audiences loved it. What made that breakthrough more important is what came right after it. Later that same year, he took the lead in School Ties and showed a completely different side of himself. This time he played David Green, a talented Jewish quarterback who hides his faith to survive in an openly hostile 1950s prep school. The role demanded strength, restraint, and quiet dignity. It also placed him opposite young Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Fraser carried the film with real seriousness. He was not just a physically gifted comic actor, he had emotional weight. Then came George of the Jungle in 1997, and once again, the scale of his popularity jumped. He played George with total physical confidence, performing most of his own stunts and getting hurt more than once doing it. That willingness to use his own body as part of the performance had already been part of his appeal. But with each film, it was becoming a double-edged sword. It made the work more thrilling. It also started taking something from him. Still, before that cost became visible, he gave one of the most daring performances of his early career in Gods and Monsters in 1998. Acting opposite Ian McKellen, Fraser played a gardener drawn into the lonely final chapter of director James Whale's life. Critics praised him. Awards attention followed. The performance proved again that his career was not built only on charm or muscle or jokes. He had real dramatic range. Then The Mummy arrived in 1999 and turned him into a genuine megastar. The movie hit theaters with big-budget set pieces, monsters, comedy, and old-fashioned adventure energy. Fraser was right at the center as Rick O'Connell, funny without being smug, heroic without being stiff. The movie exploded at the box office. In one summer, Brendan Fraser moved from well-known actor to full global movie star. A huge part of why the performance worked was how much of himself he physically put into it. One moment during filming became infamous in a hanging scene played for dark comedy. The setup went wrong, and he was actually choked into unconsciousness. The success continued with The Mummy Returns in 2001 and The Quiet American in 2002, where he played opposite Michael Caine in what many still consider one of the best performances of his career. By the early 2000s, Brendan Fraser had become one of those rare actors who could lead a giant studio hit one year and appear in a serious drama the next without feeling out of place in either. Commercially, he was at his peak among the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. For a brief stretch, he looked almost untouchable. But the same years that made him famous were also quietly breaking him down. The collapse. In 1997, while filming George of the Jungle, he met actress Afton Smith. They started dating, and by 1998, they were married. Soon, they had 3 sons. From the outside, it looked like the start of a perfect life. Fraser kept that part of his world unusually quiet, rarely bringing his family onto red carpets. That quiet life mattered to him more than people realized. In one touching example, while working on the History Channel series Texas Rising in Mexico, Fraser noticed a large silver horse named Piquis Freckles in Spanish. The horse was being picked on by smaller animals, and Fraser felt drawn to it. But this was not just a random rescue. The real reason was even more personal. He wanted that horse for his eldest son, Griffin, who is autistic. He went through an enormous effort to bring Piquis home to his farm in upstate New York. That is why the collapse of his marriage hit with such force. In December 2007, news broke that Fraser and Smith had separated. The divorce was finalized in 2009. Then the financial details came out. Under the agreement, Fraser was required to pay about $900,000 a year in combined alimony and child support. The problem was that Fraser's career was already slowing down. By 2013, keeping up with that agreement meant the need to earn roughly $2 million a year before taxes just to stay afloat. He went to court to ask for a reduction, saying his movie income had dried up. His ex-wife accused him of hiding money. The image of 2 people parting as friends gave way to something much uglier. But the worst stayed hidden for a long time. In 2018, Fraser revealed that back in 2003, at a Hollywood Foreign Press Association luncheon, former President Philip Burke assaulted him. Fraser said Burke grabbed him in a deeply violating way that left him shocked, sick, and almost in tears. He pulled away, left the event, and tried to bury the whole thing. But buried pain does not stay buried. Fraser later said, the incident fed a slow withdrawal from Hollywood and a spiral into depression and anxiety. and while he was trying to carry that emotional wound, his body was also breaking down. Years of stunts had taken a brutal toll. He underwent multiple surgeries, a back operation in 2003, more spinal work, a partial knee replacement, and vocal cord procedures. So, when people looked at Brendan Fraser between roughly 2008 and 2013 and asked what happened to him, they were seeing only the surface. Behind the scenes, he was fighting a draining court battle, living under heavy financial obligations, carrying trauma from the assault, recovering from surgeries, and trying to stay present as a father to a son with special needs. At the same time, the public turned cruel. His weight gain became tabloid material. Paparazzi photos were used in mocking headlines. His body became a joke to people who had no idea what it had been through. The confession and the comeback. In 2018, Fraser's long-hidden pain was pulled into public view through a major profile in GQ. He spoke openly about the 2003 assault. He described the fear, the shame, and the way it lingered for years. The timing mattered too. This came only months after the Weinstein scandal had exploded, when Hollywood was finally being forced to confront abuse in silence. Fraser's confession hit people hard because it shattered an old assumption. Here was a man famous and physically imposing on screen, admitting he had been violated, frightened, and deeply changed by it. In a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter in late 2025, Fraser reflected, "That piece was the first time I breathed in 15 years." Public sympathy, however, does not instantly fix a life. Fraser continued working in smaller projects. But the real turning point came when Darren Aronofsky cast him in The Whale. Aronofsky had spent more than a year searching for the right actor to play Charlie, a 600-pound reclusive English teacher. At first, he did not even expect a big-name actor to want it. Then Fraser sent in a tape. Suddenly, the choice became clear. Fraser later called the role a creative lifeline. When The Whale premiered at the Venice Film Festival on September 4, 2022, something remarkable happened. The audience gave Fraser a standing ovation that lasted 6 full minutes. He was visibly emotional. He cried. The moment spread online almost instantly, and people responded not just to the performance, but to what the moment seemed to mean. It felt like years of pain, dismissal, and quiet struggle had suddenly met a wave of recognition. The man so many people thought was gone was standing there again. He went on to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, and his tearful acceptance speech became one of the most watched Oscar moments of the decade. At 57, the truth. Now, at 57, Brendan Fraser is busier than ever. In 2025, he starred in Martin Scorsese's The Wager, a historical epic that earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Just last month, he wrapped production on Rent-Free, a dark family drama co-starring Saoirse Ronan, set for a fall 2026 release. In a candid February 2026 interview with AARP magazine, Fraser admitted what we all suspected. "I never went that far away. I was always here. You just stopped looking." He spoke about the ongoing challenges of co-parenting, the residual pain from his surgeries, and the way trauma lingers in the body. But he also spoke about gratitude. "I don't take a single day on set for granted anymore," he said. The industry has changed around him. Philip Burke was expelled from the HFPA in 2021 after an internal investigation. The Golden Globes themselves have been restructured. Fraser, who once said he would not attend the ceremony even if nominated, recently told Variety that he has made peace with the past, but not forgiveness. That distinction matters to him. Brendan Fraser's story is not a simple redemption arc. It is a story about survival. The wandering boy who never had a hometown built a life from the wreckage. He kept showing up. He kept auditioning. He kept taking parts when he could get them. And when Hollywood finally looked his way again, he was ready. At 57, Brendan Fraser has admitted what we all suspected: the pain never fully left. But neither, thank God, did he.